You can learn your entire life and still end up broke, because most of what you call learning is just training for someone else's scoreboard. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. The system does not need you to be rich. It needs you to be predictable. This is not financial advice. This is financial education. In 2026, you are watching a strange kind of divide. AI is replacing the middle, housing is separating prices from wages permanently, and the stock market keeps rising while real people quietly lose purchasing power every year. So today I want to talk about how rich people actually learn to make money, and why the way you were taught to learn is not just ineffective, it is actively harmful for your financial future. You might think this video is about books. It is not. It is about patterns. It is about what gets rewarded, what gets ignored, and what the wealthy figured out long ago. Money is not made by having information. Money is made by having usable intelligence, the kind that turns into decisions when the pressure hits. I want you to picture a specific person for a moment. 32 years old, works a steady job, good grades once, smarter than average. He is not lazy. He is not stupid. He studied, he tried, he followed the rules, and he still feels trapped in a life where the calendar moves forward but his bank account refuses to. He does not even hate his coworkers. He hates the feeling of being powerless inside a system that keeps changing the goalposts while smiling at him like it is his fault. Now imagine his story in your mind. He was the top student, then he graduates and reality hits. Promotions come slower than bills, rent rises faster than pay, car payments turn into a cage. Buying a house feels like a fantasy in a world where the average down payment is not a down payment, it is a relocation fee to a different stage of life. He starts to wonder if he is missing some secret. Then he sees classmates who used to be average suddenly become owners, founders, investors. They do not even look smarter, they just act like they are playing a different game. And here is where your anger should begin, because this is the uncomfortable truth. They did not become rich because they read more. They became rich because they learned differently. They learned in a way that built leverage, relationships, and skills that compound. You learned in a way that built compliance. Let us talk about that first mechanism, the mechanism that turns learning into poverty. Most people were trained to learn for performance, not for value. Schools reward the ability to reproduce answers. Workplaces reward the ability to survive hierarchies. Both systems are built to select people who can follow instructions, not people who can design outcomes. In the classroom, that is called studying. In the corporate world, it becomes called being a team player. But when you zoom out to your financial life, it becomes something darker. You are being engineered to stay in the middle, where substitution is cheap. AI is making this visible in real time. In 2026, you can watch companies reduce headcount faster than anyone predicted in 2020, even when profits look fine. Why? Because tasks got automated, workflows got standardized, and the margin of error got smaller. Your employer does not need you to be brilliant. They need you to be replaceable on schedule. If you are trained to do narrow tasks repeatedly, you become a plug-in component. The moment AI can simulate your output, the company does not lay you off out of cruelty. It does it because the spreadsheet says the change improves efficiency. So here is the question that matters. When you were studying, did anyone teach you how to build transferable power? Or did they teach you how to pass the next test? Because if all you ever did was chase approval, you might still be smart, but you will be financially illiterate in the way that matters. You will be able to speak in terms of grades and credentials and hard work, but you will not know how to translate that into income streams that are not owned by someone else. Pattern interrupt. Think about your own life for a second. When was the last time someone asked you to write a plan for how your learning turns into revenue? Not into confidence, not into personal growth. Revenue. When was the last time you were taught that knowledge has to survive contact with markets? Markets do not care how hard you tried. Markets do not care that you read 10 books. Markets care whether you can produce something people want at a price they will keep paying. That is why the wealthy obsess over learning that creates leverage. Leverage is what turns your time from an expense into an asset. And leverage does not begin in a brokerage account. It begins in how you learn. Next, I want to address the most common lie people tell themselves. The lie is that the rich learn by being naturally smarter. That lie is comforting because it turns poverty into destiny. It makes you think, well, I cannot become rich because I do not have the brain for it. That is not what happens. Intelligence in the real world is less about raw IQ and more about pattern recognition. It is about seeing what is relevant. It is about identifying cause and effect when the official explanation is missing. When rich people learn, they look for the rule underneath the technique. They ask, what principle is this showing me? Poor people memorize steps and hope the steps behave the same way outside the classroom. Here is a micro story you might recognize. A young analyst watches a tutorial and copies a trading strategy. He does not understand risk management. He does not understand how liquidity works. He does not understand that markets are not casinos, they are ecosystems. He thinks learning is collecting moves. Then a downturn hits, or a regime change hits, or inflation shocks the pricing model, and suddenly his confidence evaporates. He goes back to the tutorial comments and blames the strategy, blames the broker, blames timing, blames anyone except his learning process. That is not because he was dumb. It is because he was taught to learn like a student, not like an engineer. An engineer studies systems, a student studies answers. Now connect that to 2026 reality. In this year, money is not just hard because bills are higher. Money is hard because the rules change faster than your habits. The Fed can cut or hold, rates can stabilize on paper, and yet your purchasing power can still be worse than it was in 2019 because inflation does not simply vanish. It lingers in food, insurance, rent, and the cost of essentials. When interest rates stabilize, housing does not return to affordable. It just stops getting worse at the same speed. Meanwhile, wages lag, and those lagging wages are exactly what make people desperate. Desperation is a financing tool, and the wealthy know it, so they learn to think in terms of cash flow, assets, and timing. They learn what institutions learn. They learn how the system makes money, and they learn how to avoid being exploited inside it. Pattern interrupt again. Do you know what people rarely learn? How to read incentives. If you cannot read incentives, you become the perfect customer. Someone sells you a course about passive income, and you do not notice that passive income products are mostly engineered to be passive for the seller. Meanwhile, you are working a full-time job and trying to build a side hustle with zero capital. You are one emergency away from bankruptcy, and you still tell yourself you are building freedom. And then there is housing. Housing is the biggest wealth gap amplifier of your era. In the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and across much of Western Europe, home prices have detached from wage growth in a way that feels permanent. Part of it is interest rates. Part of it is zoning and supply constraints. Part of it is the fact that big pools of money can outbid individuals. But the part nobody wants to admit is this. You were taught to treat housing like an event you achieve through discipline. It is not. In 2026, housing is a transfer mechanism. It transfers future wealth from wage earners to asset holders, and it does it through scarcity and leverage. When housing becomes unattainable, young adults do not stop paying. They pivot into renting. Renting keeps cash moving upward. It is not a detour. It is the system working as designed. So the wealthy learn around it, not through hope, through structure. That brings me to the third mechanism. Rich people do not just learn more, they attach learning to ownership. Ownership changes everything. In the old version of America, you could be good at your job and climb. In the newer version, you can be good and still get flattened. AI removes the middle. Global debt keeps pressure on financial assets. Corporate restructurings become normal. Even pension models get stressed when life expectancy rises, and discount rates behave differently than promised. Underfunding becomes a slow-motion default. Social security expectations get pushed out by politics and demographics, not by your personal effort. All of that means the wage ladder is less reliable than it used to be. If your learning process only trains you for employment income, you are building your future on something that is being automated and politicalized. Rich people learn to build something that does not require permission every month. Let me show you what that looks like in learning behavior, not in slogans. A wealthy learner does not ask, how do I get a better job first? They ask, what problem can I solve repeatedly that someone will pay for, even when the economy is ugly? They ask what can become a product. They look for skills that turn into work they can sell without trading hours for survival. They look for systems that scale, audiences, software, distribution, data, brand, licensing, partnerships, and yes, investing, but investing after understanding how risk actually behaves. And when they read, they do not read like a fan, they read like a scout. They extract the underlying framework, then they test it in the world. They treat books as hypotheses, not as scripture. Meanwhile, most people read like they are studying for a quiz. They want reassurance. They want the feeling of being informed. That is why so many people have overflowing libraries and empty investment accounts. They consumed ideas without converting them into action loops. In 2026, conversion matters even more because the knowledge economy got flooded. Anyone can publish. Anyone can teach. Anyone can go viral. But most of those teachers are not building wealth through their content. They are monetizing attention. If your content strategy is only about views, You are working for an algorithm that can change its mood overnight. If your learning is only about being entertained, you are training your brain for short-term reward, not long-term leverage. Pattern interrupt. Think about crypto, because it is the perfect case study for learning and incentives. In earlier years, crypto was sold like it would make you free from banks. In 2026, regulation and institutional ownership are not rumors. They are real. Many of the coins and platforms that claim decentralization are in practice dominated by institutional structures. Retail is still present, but the power is concentrated in places where underwriting, custody, market making, and compliance create barriers. And the retail investor learns too late that decentralization was never a shield against risk. It was a distribution of risk, often away from the institutions and toward individuals who do not understand volatility. This does not mean crypto is evil. It means your learning must include market structure. It must include who controls liquidity. It must include who benefits from your assumptions. Because if you do not, you will keep repeating the same mistake across different markets. You will confuse narrative for mechanics. Now, let's go back to the classroom metaphor from earlier, but make it real for you. The transcript you provided describes a person who read classic books, but still dismissed the practical value at first. He was smart, but his intelligence was shaped by the education system. He could dominate exams, but he could not dominate outcomes. That is a common failure mode. You might have experienced it. You might have noticed that you can understand a concept quickly, but you freeze when you have to execute. You can talk about money, but you cannot build consistent habits. You can criticize hustle culture, but you have no alternative plan. You want freedom, but your learning does not connect to cash flow. That is not a character flaw. It is a missing link in the learning loop. Here is the fourth mechanism, and it is the darkest one. Learning without feedback becomes mental masturbation. If you learn but never test, you become someone who collects theories the way others collect souvenirs. It feels productive. It feels like progress. But there is no measurable improvement. In finance, that is deadly, because markets punish delayed adaptation. So wealthy learners demand feedback. They set experiments. They measure results. They adjust. They do not treat mistakes as shame. They treat mistakes as data. Remember that nurse I mentioned? Let us bring him in properly, because this is where the story gets ugly. A 31-year-old nurse named David works nights in a hospital. He is exhausted. He is caring. He is also trapped. His salary rises by small increments, but his essentials rise faster. Health insurance premiums rise. Food rises. Rent rises. He tries to invest the way he was taught. A little retirement plan, a little ETF, a little hope. Then AI accelerates scheduling efficiencies. His hospital streamlines roles. They do not fire him at first. They just reduce opportunities. Over time get squeezed. Raises get delayed. Meanwhile, his landlord renovates and resets rent because demand stays high. One day, David makes a decision. He hears about side gigs online. He reads a few threads. He watches influencers. He starts posting content about nursing tips. He does not understand content distribution. He does not understand analytics. He does not understand how to monetize without getting stuck in $0 months. He spends hours learning systems that were designed for someone else's audience, someone else's country, someone else's algorithm. For a while, he feels motivated. Then nothing compounds. No audience grows. No revenue arrives. The burnout comes back. He feels stupid for trying. He does not quit because he is lazy. He quits because he never built feedback into his learning loop. He learns skills without measurable milestones. And here is the part you need to recognize in yourself. When you do not get results, do you blame the system, or do you examine your process? Many people blame everything except the learning loop. They switch books. They switch channels. They switch strategies. They never ask the uncomfortable question: did I learn in a way that creates outcomes, or did I learn in a way that creates comfort? This is why you can watch people reading daily and still falling behind. It is not that reading is useless. It is that the reading is detached from action and feedback. Reading becomes identity. Action becomes too risky. Feedback becomes too scary. So the brain chooses the safer reward, consuming more. And consumption feels like progress. In 2026, consumption is a business model. That is not a conspiracy. It is capitalism. Attention monetization exists because it is profitable. The people who benefit from your distraction are not only influencers, they are also the financial intermediaries that profit when you stay confused, when you stay late, when you stay emotionally reactive to headlines. So wealthy people learn to be uncomfortable in the right places. They learn to ask hard questions early. Now let me escalate the stakes, because this is where your anger should turn into clarity. The education system teaches you to respect credentials. It teaches you to believe there is a single track: school, job, retirement. But that track is under pressure in 2026. Look at retirement. Pensions are underfunded. Aging populations increase the burden. Social Security faces long-term solvency issues as promised benefits outgrow the contributions. People in their 30s and 40s are now planning as if they will not get full support, and they are right to be worried. Even when politicians promise fixes, the window for political action does not align with your personal timeline. And global debt is over $300 trillion across the world. That debt does not disappear. It requires refinancing, restructuring, or monetization over time. Each cycle changes interest rate expectations. Each cycle pressures currency values. Each cycle threatens asset prices.